Good morning, everybody. Thankfully, as I was backing out of my driveway, I checked my email to see that we have a snow day today, so I didn't drive all the way down to Indy. I miss being with you guys. I know we got to get some work done today, so I'm going ahead and putting this video on here. I looked online for some other videos that had some snazzy animation and stuff like that, but it just didn't tell you everything that I felt like you needed to know to be amazing at your research paper. So we're going to be on page 239 of your books. Go ahead and open it. I'm waiting. Okay. If you need to, pause the video before I get going. We're going to talk today about your introduction, and that's what I want to focus on. So you have your outlines. I will be reviewing those. I had you leave the introduction blank because I want to focus on a couple things today. One is the structure of your introduction, what I'm expecting from you, and the other is your thesis statement particularly. The thesis statement, which I tend to call sometimes thesis statements, it is what it is. I was a good writer all the way through high school and college, but even in college, I remember I was always weak on thesis statements. And I remember it was because I never felt like I knew exactly what was meant by that. What do you mean by a thesis statement? And then when I started teaching English, I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually so easy. Why did no one ever explain it to me like this? Chances are they probably did, and I just didn't get it at the time. Coffee. So on page 239, starting with the definition, the thesis statement is usually considered, and here's your blank, the topic sentence of your essay because it outlines, second blank, the content of your essay in one place. A good thesis will link the subject of an essay with the controlling idea. For example, people in the past spent a great deal of effort protecting themselves from witches. This would be a paper, perhaps about the Salem witch trials. The subject is that people were afraid of witches, and the controlling idea is that they spent a great deal of effort protecting themselves from these witches. So a thesis statement is that part of the paper where you're telling people what's coming. We hear this in speeches all the time. Somebody starts out their introduction, sometimes they've got a story, sometimes they've got an example, something to draw you in. That's called the hook, okay? And that's what you're going to do in your paper as well. Your introduction always starts with some sort of hook. And we'll talk about those in a second. Then you have to connect the hook to your overall idea, okay? Because you never want just like, here's a very interesting hook, but it has nothing to do with my paper. But you're listening to me now. That's dumb. Don't do that. You help connect it, and then your thesis, I tell you, put on your best Southern accent and you say, it tells them what you're going to tell them. Because people want to be prepared. Oh, okay, this is what we're covering. This is the subject. This is the way my train of thought is going to go. Then they're prepared to hear everything that you have to say to them. Okay, so a thesis statement tells them what you're going to tell them. The position, here's your next notes here. In a short essay, the thesis statement appears at the end of the introduction. At the end of the introduction. That's that blank line that goes on to the second part there, okay? Why is in all capital letters? Because it tells them what you're going to tell them. And I literally want you to write down all of the dialogue, the dialect there. It tells em, apostrophe em, what you're going to tell them. It is the signpost that says we are going this way in this essay, and they're like, good, now I'm ready to go with you. The purpose of the thesis, okay? Thesis should be narrow and concise. That's the first blank under purpose. Narrow and concise in order to allow the fullest exploration of the issues as possible. And it should reflect the type of paper that follows, whether it be, there's usually two types, persuasive or informative. If you're writing a very strong persuasive paper, but your thesis never indicates you're going to be trying to have an opinion one way or the other about something, it's going to be really confusing. Your reader needs, again, to be directed so they're ready to go the way that you want them to go and receive the information you want them to receive. The narrowness or conciseness of your thesis statement is a protection for you. What it does is it makes sure that you are not saying something super broad, okay, like broad topic on page 239 towards the bottom there. Many photographers have risen through the ranks to gain a sort of fame equal to that of movie stars. That's really, really broad. So if that's my thesis statement, my paper has to cover every photographer who has been famous since the beginning of photography And also comparing them to tons of movie stars who've made a bunch of money and been really, really famous in many different eras of photography and film. That's a lot to write about. I mean, that's a paper, this thick. So I want to narrow it down a little bit. Notice the next one. Many black and white photographers use their skills to capture images that move people emotionally. By narrowing it down, now I've eliminated all color photography. So I don't have to talk about any of that. Okay? And I can limit it to only images that move people emotionally. Now, it's still pretty broad because there were a lot of black and white photographers out there. And photographs that move people emotionally, that's kind of subjective. You could look at a photograph and be like, wow, that's amazing. And I could look at it and be like, I don't get it. Okay, so that's still really broad topic. You're probably writing a paper about this big, okay? So the best or the narrowest topic example here at the bottom, Ansel Adams, one of the most famous black and white photographers, pioneered landscape photography, experimented with the capabilities of his cameras, and pushed the limits of darkroom manipulation. Now what I've done is I've eliminated all of the photographers except for Ansel Adams. I'm just going to talk about him. And then what I've done is in this thesis statement, the way that I've put it in there, you as a reader know I'm only going to focus on 3 areas. I'm not going to talk about his personal life. I'm not going to talk about his other hobbies. Fascinating. He was a very, very accomplished musician. Getting off topic. I know that if I'm reading this, I'm going, okay, they're going to talk about how he pioneered landscape photography. What does that look like? How he experimented capabilities with his camera, and then how he pushed the limits of darkroom manipulation. Darkroom is where you would develop the film, and he, before there was Lightroom and Photoshop, all these photo filters, he would go in there and mess with all the chemicals and how he developed things so that it appeared on the print exactly how he wanted it to. Okay? And I've taken something that's like, oh, photographers from all time and movie stars, and gone one photographer in these 3 areas. And now I have something that I can keep between 4 and 20 pages, depending on the in-depth nature and the level that I'm writing this paper on. Okay? Yeah? Okay, so that is your thesis statement. So as you're thinking about your particular topic, one of the things that you can do is on page 240, it says there's a process. You've already done process number 1. Okay, you've decided what you're writing about, but you've done a ton of research now. And you've outlined your paper. You've seen where the gaps are and things that you need to fill in. You know what you're writing about. So now I want you to craft one sentence that's telling me what you're going to tell me in this paper. Flip a few pages to our example on the paper on Oskar Schindler. Oskar Schindler. It's on page 249. This is an example of a great introduction on page 249. Notice we have a really great hook. A hook is a statement that pulls the reader in. It can be an analogy. It can be a story. It can be a story that's true or hypothetical. You want to let them know if that's the case. It can be a famous quote. It can be an interesting hypothetical question. I do want to say stay away from hypothetical question if you can, because too many students are like, have you ever heard of Oskar Schindler? Well, I'm going to tell you about him. Don't do that. You are in 8th grade. Stop it. Okay, you are amazing. You can do better than that. So notice how this pulls you in. He was an alcoholic, a cheater, a womanizer, and a very greedy man. You're like, ooh, that sounds like a terrible person. After his father's farm machinery plant went bankrupt, he developed connections with the Nazi Party. We're connecting now who this person is to the subject. Oskar Schindler's behavior in much of his life was to be scorned indeed. And here's our thesis. However, and this is the turn and makes you go, ooh, I want to hear about this. After seeing how Jews were treated by the Nazis throughout the course of World War II, Schindler mended his ways, and in his lifetime he saved hundreds of oppressed Jews. So we know that this paper, once it's hooked you in, this is a story of redemption, that the suffering of what was going on around him is what changed him as a person. And we're going to know about how he totally stopped being that horrible person, mended his ways, and then ended up saving hundreds of Jews right under the nose of the Nazis. That's a great way to set up this paper, okay? So I want you to think about what is something very interesting about my subject that I can use to hook the reader. If it's a type of warfare, maybe take a few sentences and just try to vividly describe a battle situation from what you've researched. If it's about a particular person, maybe give me a really interesting fact about their childhood, that led to, like I think about President Roosevelt, he recovered from polio. Okay, polio is a disease we can't really think about anymore, but imagine like having a disease where it's totally crippled you, you can't use your legs right, and you go on to become the president of America and then lead the US through World War II. That's amazing. That's going to pull me in. And then I want you to think through your thesis statement, okay, and write out clearly, what are you going to tell me in this paper? It's going to use all of your brain skill and you will be amazing, okay? So your homework to do today, okay, on this snow day, on Thursday, is to write your introduction with a hook, connect it to the subject, okay, and then write a thesis statement. And what I want you to do is type it out, okay, with your hook, your connection, and your thesis statement, and I want you to underline your thesis statement so that when you send it to me, it looks like this, and I can tell that you know what your thesis statement is too, because I have had students write a fabulous thesis statement in their introduction, but they can't actually identify which sentence is their thesis statement, so I want to make sure that you know what it is, okay? So that's for today. I will also post work. You're going to start on actually writing your draft over the weekend. Remember, your rough draft is due on the 23rd, I believe, if I'm remembering our due dates correctly. Yes, February 23rd. So a week from... No, okay, it's on Tuesday. So you have over the week. Math is hard. You have over the weekend to write it. I'm going to look at your outline today, if I absolutely can. I'm also helping my kids through all their e-learning, and make sure that you look like you're on the right track. I'm going to look through your introduction tomorrow, and if I see big problems, I'll give you some feedback on it. So type it out, your introduction, save it as a document, and turn it into me electronically, either through Schoology on this assignment or send it directly to my email. That way I make sure that I get it. If I can't find it, I'm going to let you know that I haven't gotten it from you yet. And that way you already have your introduction and you can just plow through and start writing. The final thing that I want you to look for is I'm going to post later on tomorrow a video on how to write in-text citations. That's the final thing that most students just want to rip their hair out about. It's not actually that difficult, but be on the lookout. As you're writing your draft, you need to watch that video first. So write your introduction, send it to me. I'll post that video. I want you to watch on in-text citations, and then you can write your rough draft over the weekend. It's extremely important that you get this in-text citations. It's not 100% easy, so I want you to fight against the human depravity tendency to just be lazy and not do it and be like, it's fine, okay? You are going to need to get how to do this for papers for the rest of high school and college, because I may look nice and sweet on this video, but by the time you get to Mr. Streeter's classes, he will make you sob in front of your classmates if you cannot get this down. And I'm only kind of joking. So apply your brains, be amazing at your introduction, look for that video in text citations, and I hope you have a great rest of your snow day.